Long before the United States existed, before European ships crossed the Atlantic, North America was already home to millions of people. They lived in vast cities, engineered landscapes, governed powerful confederacies, and traded across thousands of miles. Some built earthen pyramids taller than any structure in Europe at the time. Others managed forests so carefully that entire ecosystems depended on their knowledge. Yet, much of this history is rarely told. How did Native American societies thrive for thousands of years before colonization? And why has their world so often been erased from the story of America? To understand the continent that became the United States, we must first uncover the deep and complex history that came before it. To understand Native American history before the United States, we must step far back in time, long before written records, borders, or modern nations. The first peoples of the Americas arrived at least 15,000 years ago, and possibly much earlier, during the last Ice Age. Most scholars agree that groups migrated from Northeast Asia into North America, likely crossing a land bridge known as Beringia, though coastal migration routes are also strongly supported by archaeological evidence. Over thousands of years, these early peoples spread across the continent, adapting to radically different environments. By the time Europeans arrived in the late 15th century, North America was not an empty wilderness. It was a densely populated continent shaped by human hands. Estimates vary, but many historians believe that between 5 and 10 million people lived north of Mexico alone. They spoke hundreds of distinct languages and belonged to thousands of unique cultures, each with its own traditions, political systems, and worldviews. Geography played a decisive role in shaping these societies. In the Arctic, Inuit communities mastered survival in extreme cold, relying on hunting, fishing, and sophisticated tools. Along the Pacific Northwest, abundant natural resources allowed tribes like the Haida and Tlingit to build permanent settlements, develop complex social hierarchies, and create monumental art. In the Great Plains, mobile societies followed bison herds, while in the eastern woodlands, agricultural communities grew corn, beans, and squash, forming stable villages and powerful alliances. Some native societies developed large, organized urban centers. The Mississippian culture, which flourished between roughly 800 and 1600 CE, built cities connected by trade networks stretching across much of North America. Cahokia, near present-day St. Louis, was one of the largest cities in the world at its peak around the year 1100. It featured massive earthen mounds, planned neighborhoods, and a population comparable to major European cities of the same era. Political systems varied widely. Some societies were led by hereditary chiefs, others by councils of elders, and many by consensus-based governance. The Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy, united multiple nations under a sophisticated political framework designed to maintain peace and collective decision-making. Their system of governance would later influence European thinkers, though this connection is still debated among historians. Religion and spirituality were deeply woven into daily life. Native American worldviews emphasized balance, responsibility to the land, and interconnectedness between humans, animals, and nature. Land was not viewed as property to be owned, but as a living system to be respected and sustained. These beliefs shaped agricultural practices, hunting traditions, and social norms that allowed communities to thrive for generations. This history matters because it challenges a powerful myth. The idea that North America was undeveloped or unused before European arrival is false. Indigenous peoples shaped forests, rivers, and plains through careful management, agriculture, and trade. Their societies were dynamic, resilient, and deeply rooted in the land. To understand what was lost, changed, and survived after colonization, we must first recognize the richness of the world that already existed.
For thousands of years before European contact, Native American societies evolved through innovation, adaptation, and exchange. They were not static cultures frozen in time, but dynamic civilizations responding to climate change, population growth, conflict, and opportunity. Across the continent, trade routes connected distant regions, allowing goods, ideas, and technologies to circulate long before transatlantic contact. Copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, obsidian from the Rockies, and ceremonial objects from the southeast moved across vast distances, linking communities that would never meet face to face. Agriculture transformed many native societies. Beginning in Mesoamerica and spreading northward, crops like maize, beans, and squash became staples across much of North America. This agricultural system, often called the Three Sisters, allowed communities to grow surplus food, support larger populations, and develop permanent settlements. In the eastern woodlands and southwest, farming villages expanded into towns and social organization became more complex. In the arid southwest, ancestral Pueblo peoples engineered remarkable solutions to environmental challenges. They built irrigation systems, terraced fields, and multi-story dwellings carved into cliffs or constructed from stone and adobe. Sites like Chaco Canyon became regional centers of trade, ceremony, and governance between roughly 850 and 1250 CE. Though debates continue about how centralized these societies were, there is no doubt they required coordination, planning, and shared cultural traditions across great distances. Further east, the Mississippian world reached its height. Cities like Cahokia were not isolated anomalies, but part of a broader cultural network defined by mound building, ceremonial centers, and powerful leaders. These societies organized labor on a massive scale, constructing earthworks aligned with celestial events and maintaining political authority over surrounding villages. Over time, environmental pressures, internal conflict, and shifting trade patterns led to the decline of many Mississippian centers before Europeans arrived. Conflict and For thousands of years before European contact, Native American societies evolved through innovation, adaptation, and exchange. They were not static cultures frozen in time, but dynamic civilizations responding to climate change, population growth, conflict, and opportunity. Across the continent, trade routes connected distant regions, allowing goods, ideas, and technologies to circulate long before transatlantic contact. Copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, obsidian from the Rockies, and ceremonial objects from the southeast moved across vast distances, linking communities that would never meet face to face. Agriculture transformed many native societies. Beginning in Mesoamerica and spreading northward, crops like maize, beans, and squash became staples across much of North America. This agricultural system, often called the Three Sisters, allowed communities to grow surplus food, support larger populations, and develop permanent settlements. In the eastern woodlands and southwest, farming villages expanded into towns and social organization became more complex. In the arid southwest, ancestral Pueblo peoples engineered remarkable solutions to environmental challenges. They built irrigation systems, terraced fields, and multi-story dwellings carved into cliffs or constructed from stone and adobe. Sites like Chaco Canyon became regional centers of trade, ceremony, and governance between roughly 850 and 1250 CE. Though debates continue about how centralized these societies were, there is no doubt they required coordination, planning, and shared cultural traditions across great distances. Further east, the Mississippian world reached its height. Cities like Cahokia were not isolated anomalies, but part of a broader cultural network defined by mound building, ceremonial centers, and powerful leaders. These societies organized labor on a massive scale, constructing earthworks aligned with celestial events and maintaining political authority over surrounding villages. Over time, environmental pressures, internal conflict, and shifting trade patterns led to the decline of many Mississippian centers before Europeans arrived. Conflict and warfare were also part of pre-contact native history, though they varied widely in scale and purpose. Some conflicts were ritualized or limited, others were more destructive. Alliances shifted, rivalries formed, and migrations occurred as groups sought better land or escaped pressure from neighbors. These movements reshaped the cultural map of North America long before Europeans set foot on the continent. The arrival of Europeans in the late 15th and early 16th centuries marked a profound turning point. Spanish, French, and later English explorers entered a world they did not understand and often misinterpreted. Initial encounters ranged from cautious trade to violent confrontation, but the most devastating impact came not from weapons, but from disease. Smallpox, measles, influenza, and other illnesses spread rapidly among indigenous populations who had no prior exposure or immunity. The demographic collapse was catastrophic. In some regions, indigenous populations declined by more than half within a generation. Entire villages were abandoned, social structures fractured under the weight of loss. Survivors regrouped, merged with other communities, or relocated to avoid further devastation. This period of upheaval fundamentally altered native societies even before sustained colonization took place. Despite these losses, native peoples adapted. They incorporated European goods into existing trade networks, formed new alliances, and resisted encroachment in diverse ways. Some groups negotiated treaties, others fought prolonged wars, and many did both at different times. Long before the United States existed, native nations were already navigating a transformed world, struggling to survive while defending their land, sovereignty, and identity.
The most decisive turning point in Native American history before the United States was not a single battle or year, but a cascading collision of worlds that unfolded over generations. By the 17th century, the balance of power across North America was shifting rapidly. European colonies expanded inland, driven by land hunger, religious ambition, and imperial rivalry. Native nations found themselves pulled into global conflicts that were not their own, forced to navigate an increasingly violent and unstable landscape. Firearms and horses transformed warfare and mobility, reshaping long-standing rivalries. Some nations, such as the Iroquois Confederacy, leveraged European weapons and trade to expand their influence dramatically during the Beaver Wars. These conflicts restructured the political map of the Northeast, displacing entire communities and intensifying cycles of violence. Elsewhere, native groups fought desperately to protect their homelands, as seen in conflicts like the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, where indigenous peoples successfully expelled Spanish colonizers from New Mexico for over a decade. Yet even resistance carried a heavy cost. European powers often exploited intertribal divisions, forming temporary alliances that collapsed once their goals were met. Treaties were signed and broken. Promises were made and ignored. As colonial settlements grew, native land was steadily encroached upon through warfare, coercion, and legal manipulation. The loss was not only territorial, but cultural. Sacred sites were destroyed, trade networks disrupted, and traditional ways of life increasingly constrained. By the mid-18th century, the world Native Americans had shaped for thousands of years was under relentless pressure. The French and Indian War drew indigenous nations into a struggle between European empires, with outcomes that would determine control of vast territories. When Britain emerged victorious, native leaders like Pontiac recognized the danger immediately. His pan-tribal resistance reflected a growing awareness that survival now required unity on an unprecedented scale. This era marked the irreversible transformation of North America. Native societies were no longer facing isolated outsiders, but a permanent colonial presence backed by global empires. Even before the American Revolution, the foundations of indigenous sovereignty had been deeply shaken. The climax of this story is not a final defeat, but the moment when the future of Native America was fundamentally altered, setting the stage for the creation of the United States and the struggles that would follow. When the United States finally emerged at the end of the 18th century, it did not enter an empty land. It rose on a continent shaped by thousands of years of Native American history. The political boundaries, trade routes, agricultural landscapes, and even patterns of settlement that Europeans encountered were deeply influenced by native societies that had long preceded them. Native Americans were not simply witnesses to early American history. They were active participants whose decisions, alliances, and resistance profoundly shaped the nation's formation. Despite centuries of disease, warfare, and displacement, native nations endured. Many adapted with remarkable resilience, preserving languages, traditions, and systems of governance under immense pressure. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy influenced democratic ideas that later appeared in American political thought. Native agricultural knowledge, from maize cultivation to land management through controlled burns, reshaped colonial survival and expansion. Even as native sovereignty was increasingly denied, native presence never disappeared. The long-term consequences of this pre-United States history remain visible today. Modern debates over land rights, treaties, environmental stewardship, and cultural preservation all trace their roots to this earlier era. Archaeological discoveries continue to challenge outdated myths, revealing urban centers like Cahokia and vast trade networks that rivaled those of Europe. Scholars increasingly recognize that North America before colonization was not a wilderness, but a human-shaped world. Understanding Native American history before the United States changes how we understand America itself. It forces a reckoning with narratives of discovery and progress, replacing them with stories of continuity, complexity, and survival. The past does not begin in 1776. It stretches back thousands of years, carried forward by peoples whose histories are still unfolding. This story raises an important question. How might our understanding of American history change if native voices were placed at the center rather than the margins? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this exploration meaningful, consider liking the video to help others discover it. And if you want more deeply researched history that uncovers the stories beneath the surface, subscribe to the channel. There is much more of the past still waiting to be told.